Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
Will the Northern League, leaning like the Tower of Pisa towards the south it once reviled, emerge as the biggest party in the Italian elections? Is Berlusconi back, still bunga-bunga-ing at the age of 81?
Or will the populist five-star movement pull off the shock of the century and snatch power away from the long-established parties? And where are the Italian left? Once so strong, the US had to regularly interfere in Italian elections just to stop them.
And when, oh when, will Germany, the most important country in Europe, actually have a government? Who better to answer these questions than our resident continental political expert, Dr. Russell Foster of King's College London. Dr. Russell, thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with Italy, if we may. Why are there elections? To what? And who are the runners and riders?
Well, the Italian elections this year are largely a continuation of last year's great year of elections in Europe. We knew that this was coming for a while, as it's constitutionally obliged under the Italian system. But in comparison to previous elections, the French, the Dutch, even the British, the Italian one this year is almost impossible to predict. This isn't helped by the fact that under Italian law, it's illegal to take opinion polls in the week before the election. So we're largely going in blind to see what the outcome will be on Monday morning. Now, the Italian elections are very significant because we're going to see a continuation of the same themes and the same fears that infected, if you like, the French, British, Dutch, German elections. Now, let's take a look at Italy's neighbours as well. In France, we saw a runoff between two anti-establishment outsiders, both of whom we could fairly call populists. In Austria, we've seen the election of the first far-right government since the defeat of the New Order in 1945. So Italy is partly connected to these fears in more northern European countries, concerns over the EU's hegemony, concerns over its economic position, but Italy has also got the same themes that we see in Eastern Mediterranean nations, such as Greece and the Eastern European post-Soviet countries, namely a fear of immigration and a concern around this. So just as France and Italy were litmus tests for opinions about the EU, for opinions about the general status quo and the establishment, Italy on Sunday is going to be a litmus test for concerns over identity, concerns over immigration, and of course concerns over the economy, especially given that if the economy does further stagnate in Italy, they won't be able to rely on bailouts from Berlin anymore. So the Italian elections are going to be very important. Now, it does seem possible that Berlusconi, the leader of Forza Italia, could make a comeback. He's a charismatic politician. Whatever we may think of his policies, he is energetic, engaging. He knows how to hold a crowd.
Even at the age of 81?
Even at the age of 81. And the Italians do seem to have a predilection for this. They do seem to go for older leaders.
There was a man called Mussolini who compared in some respects. He was a journalist and media man too. Before we get on to Berlusconi, I want to ask you about the Northern League. The Northern League we used to describe as a fascist formation. Its thesis was that the hard-working Northern Italians were being dragged down and having to subsidize the poor and darker Italians of the South. Africa begins at Rome was their rubric. But they've made a turn, an all-Italian turn, dropped the word Northern from their name. Tell us, please, why they did that and whether it's likely to succeed.
Well, it's a very symbolic statement to change the name of their party from being a regionalist group to being a party which is advocating representation for the whole of Italy. Imagine if Labour changed its name to Northern Labour or London Labour. It would seem highly divisive. So the League has now gone for an approach of trying to appeal to all Italians. Now, in some ways, this has been quite a smart move because the concerns of Northern Italians, generally the urban industrial Italians who will vote for what used to be Northern League, their concerns are economic, constitutional. The concerns of Southern Italians are much more focused around immigration. Exactly. And the fact that historically, since the unification of Italy in the 1860s, the South has been treated as almost an unwelcome member of the Italian state. So League is now trying to appeal across the spectrum to your traditional urban industrial or post-industrial proletariat, the middle class who are feeling squeezed by the Italian economy, and the rural Southerners. League is an example of another newcomer anti-establishment populist party, which is a phenomenon that we've been seeing in the last couple of years across Europe. A little bit like AfD in Germany, it initially started out as being what we might call soft Eurosceptic. They had their concerns were related to Eurozone membership, to constitutional issues in Italy. But as a result of what's happened with the migration crisis, the financial crisis, the continuing debacle over Brexit negotiations, they're now shifting their focus from economic Euroscepticism towards identity scepticism and trying to appeal to Italians' sense of losing control of their own country.
Berlusconi. He has a gentleman's agreement with the League that whoever gets the most votes, their candidate can go forward to be PM. It can't be Berlusconi because he's disbarred, having been convicted of crime. Who's his candidate for PM? And which of the two do you think might emerge as the top dog?
What we've got to remember with the Berlusconi situation is that with Italy, we're seeing the same phenomenon that we saw especially in the Netherlands and to a lesser degree in France and Germany, whereby a popular leader of a mainstream party has, for want of a better word, been infected by an anti-immigration, anti-Europe discourse. So Berlusconi is very much a puppet master at the moment. As you say, he can't actually run for a constitutional office. But it's eminently possible that we could see Berlusconi being the eminence grise of pulling the strings from behind the Chamber of Deputies.
And maybe even get the law changed and get himself back into play.
Which would not be unheard of in any European political situation, especially Italian politics, which have a reputation for what the liberals in the 19th century used to call trasformismo, of putting basically your friends into cushy and protected government jobs. So this is a distinct possibility. Regardless of whether Berlusconi's movement actually makes a dent in the Italian elections, we are going to see exactly the same phenomenon that we saw across Europe from the Brexit negotiations through to the present day, which is mainstream establishment parties trying to claw back supporters from these newcomer populists by adopting a lot of their rhetoric. So, unfortunately, in the absence of a real left in Italy, we're going to see some sort of centre-right to hard-right government which is going to be appealing to the very themes and discourses of the far right.
So where are the left then?
A little bit like the left in Germany and in France and to a lesser extent in the Netherlands. They've split. Now, partly this is due to demographic and social changes from the 1960s onwards. We're now a post-industrial civilization. There isn't really an industrial working class anymore. So the left's traditional power base is fragmented. Look at what happened with the traditional Labour vote in Britain when UKIP emerged. The traditional left demography splits to different ends of the spectrum. And the left in Italy is also somewhat discredited in the eyes of many Italian voters because of ongoing support for humanitarian operations in the migration crisis, for appealing to have greater integration of migrants. This is a deeply humanitarian gesture, but it's one that greatly alienates the people of the traditional left votership.
Sadly, I'm older than you, much. I recall vividly when the polarity in Italy was between an all-powerful Christian democracy, which no longer exists, and an equally all-powerful Communist Party, which no longer exists. The Communists were so strong that the United States was ceaselessly involved in Italian politics to stop them coming to power. Christian democracy is no more. The Communist Party is no more. Instead, we have this five-star movement. What's the etymology, if you like, of that?
Five Star is an example of precisely the phenomenon you've just described, of the collapse of a hard left and a very traditional liberal middle-class centre-right. So this was seen across Europe. The Americans never really had a left, so this was seen in the European West from the 60s, 70s onwards, that with the collapse of this highly polarised system, and especially after the 1990s with the collapse of the Soviet Union, we see the traditional hard left being abandoned in favour of mainstream globalising capitalist economies, that you had a choice between the man in the blue tie or the man in the left tie who have slightly different economic policies. It's that precise lack of diversity in political ideologies which has led to the emergence of Five Star and League, because 30, 40 years of this frankly bland centrist politics.
Blairism, two cheeks of the same backside.
Exactly, it's alienated.
So is Five Star left or is it right?
I would describe Five Star as being analogous to Marine Le Pen's Front National. Marine Le Pen described Front National as being neither on the left nor the right. It's something which transcends that traditional French Revolution binary. Five Star is looking a bit like the League to try and appeal to middle-class voters who feel alienated and disillusioned with the current system, but equally appealing to your traditional post-working class voters who equally feel that that the establishment status quo is not addressing their concerns on identity and immigration. Liga and Five Star, we can see them as being very different entities, but in fact they're much closer than we think.
Okay, we're running out of time. Will Germany have a government anytime soon?
No. And the reason for this unfortunate negative prediction is that Germany, on the same day that the Italians go to the polls on Sunday, the Germans, 464,000 members of the the SPD, will be voting on whether to join...
Germany's Labour Party.
Precisely. Will be voting internally on whether or not to form another grand coalition with Angela Merkel's Christian Democrats. Now, there's already been two grand coalitions between Merkel and the SPD. Neither of them was particularly popular. In the aftermath of the German elections, it looked like the FPD, the sort of centre-right, a little bit anarcho-capitalist movement, was going to form an alliance with them. That was rejected, and a lot of the SPD membership is very unhappy about forming an alliance with Merkel. We also have to remember that if another grand coalition between basically the German Conservatives and German Labour emerges, that means the main opposition party is going to be Alternative for Deutschland, who will then sit in the Bundestag sniping at every policy failure and every inability to agree. My prediction is that we're going to see another German election at some point in the spring of this year, and that is something that will be unprecedented since the new order.
I'm with you on that. You know, I mean this, I could listen to you all day, but sadly, we've run out of time.
Coming up next, the Cheshire housewife, footballer's wife, with the brain and the heart. It's Mrs. Leanne Brown. Don't miss her.
Welcome back to Sputnik. Leanne Brown, wife of Manchester United and England star Wes Brown, and a TV star in her own right in the likes of the Real Housewives of Cheshire. Leanne's good works know no bounds.
Whether helping her husband spread the game of football to the poor masses in India, campaigning with one woman at a time, the campaign against FGM, and she has a clothing line encouraging the empowerment of women, and she has 250,000 followers on social media, and she's a mother of 3.
Remarkably, she's found time to come aboard the Sputnik. Leanne, a big welcome to you for coming down from the frozen north, while Wes is at the coal face in Kerala in India. We'll talk about him later, but it's your work we want to concentrate on. You're no longer with the Real Housewives of Cheshire, so take us behind the curtains. What was that like?
It was fun, mostly, and I enjoyed my time.
How long did you do it?
6 series.
Yeah.
It was, when it was new, it was so exciting, and nobody ever dreamed that it would get as big as what it has done, and it's getting really popular, and it keeps growing.
What's the magic of that, do you think? What's the secret of it becoming so popular?
I just think reality TV nowadays, it's just people, obviously the insight into Cheshire being the area that it is, and people want to know what you're doing, the lives of us girls, I suppose, and the glamour and everything, and it just...
Two of my kids live there, and so I know something about the area, but it's been... These reality series have been very different, haven't they? Essex, Geordieland, Cheshire. Do you think that is also the secret, that it's showing people behind the curtains in class terms how differently people live their lives?
Yeah, maybe. It's, well, you've got the Geordie Shore and you've got the...
Only Way is Essex.
Yeah, but they're all young, single people, whereas most of us are married, we're a lot older, and it's just, we've got a different outlook on lives. We've got families, whereas they're kind of carefree, and it's more about who's seeing who's gotten off with who, and it's like, that's what makes it exciting.
So you've put your energy into something else, like the charity. Can you tell us about that?
One woman at a time.
Yeah.
The name of the charity. It was set up by, well, it started by a lady called Jean Anderson, who I've known for about 7 years. She actually did my hypnobirthing with my youngest daughter.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
She did hypnobirthing.
Yes,
oh, did
yes,
you?
absolutely.
Isn't it amazing?
With our latest
100%.
baby.
Yeah.
11 months ago. She swears by it.
And it should be
amazing.
part of the NHS.
Yes, I agree.
Definitely be.
I agree.
Now it's only, you know, left for those who can afford it. But it should
Well,
really
the
be out
difference
there.
between the second labour and the first was phenomenal.
Yeah.
180%.
And the hypno thing was obviously the
Key, absolutely.
to it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's another subject I'd love to talk about, because I could get on a big rant about that, about the NHS making it part of their training for the midwives.
Exactly.
But Jean does the hypnobirthing, that's how I met her. I lost contact with her, got back in touch with her after a few years, and then she started telling me about all her work in Africa. She'd been over there. She was trying to, basically, when she was over there, working with a group, observing FGM and the troubles it faces and trying to raise awareness for it. She then befriended a lady who died in childbirth and left 6 children behind. 2 of them were girls, so were at fear of being sold and being cut to the FGM. And she vowed to protect them and sponsor them girls to prevent them from that happening. And then it kind of went on from there, really. She got other girls that had come through that she wanted to help. She was asking friends, can you sponsor this girl? And then when she told me about it, I was just so moved, and something resonated within me. I just said, I want to help you. I'd love to go to Africa. I'll sponsor one of... Margaret left 6... Margaret's the woman who died in childbirth. And she left 6 children behind. So I've now sponsored one of her boys, David, to go to school because they have no money. There's it's to pay for their education. And
Which part of Africa?
It's Kenya. It's West Pokot.
This is one of the main areas where this is happening. The FGM.
Yeah.
How big? Go ahead. How big an issue is it? When you go to Africa, do the people know why it's an issue, or are they slightly bemused at Westerners arriving, telling them how bad it is?
No, there is. It's quite a small village where Jean did her work, where we visited, and some of them have never met. They call them Mzungus. They call us Mzungus, white people. So they've never met a Mzungu. And everybody was so lovely, so welcoming. We stayed in a convent house. It was pretty basic, to say the least. I mean, the water ran out, the electric went off. We didn't have any cooker. We had a little camping stove in the kitchen. So it was definitely an eye-opener for me. But they already have a group there to end FGM, and there's a lady that is the head of that group called Dom Tiller. She's actually received an award of the Queen just like recently for her work in Kenya against FGM. So that group is already set up, and there's a lot of ex-circumcisers that have joined her group and to raise awareness, and they have marches through villages to tell the girls what's going to happen to them, because a lot of them don't know. They basically, they have a big celebration, and then it's like a rite of passage. You're going to become a woman, and this is to actually educate them. No, this is what's going to happen to you. And then they're actually standing forward and saying, I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be caught. I don't want to be married. And usually they're getting married to somebody that's like old enough to be their father or their grandfather. So our aim as a charity, that is kind of already established. We're talking with them to try and help them if they've got any girls that need money for sponsorship, for education. And also we aim to sponsor girls that are even a bit older, that we can send them on a nursing course or any kind of course to further their education, to get a job, to give them economic power.
And that's what the charity is doing?
Yes.
It's basically trying to rescue girls?
Yeah.
And educate
that's
them.
Just in Africa. That's kind of what we do in Africa. So when Wes was signed to India, obviously me and Jean, I was already like helping Jean with the charity, and I said, would you come over to India with me? Maybe we could find somewhere over there that would need our help in where Wes is. And so we went over and connected with a women's refuge from women and children that have suffered sexual abuse, domestic abuse. Not so much around the FGM, but more about the abuse, but all about women and empowering them. Since then, Wes has gone over with a couple of his teammates, and now they've started a campaign called Save the Children campaign, and he's now become the ambassador of that campaign. Yeah, so
How is he doing? I must tell you, he was a very great favourite of mine throughout his whole career. From his first appearance, I saw it. I loved him at United. I was sorry that he left. He could actually fit quite well into the back four at Manchester United right now, I'll tell you. But I wouldn't expect you to comment on that. It must be a big culture shock for him now playing in India, where football has only very recently been established.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
Is he enjoying it?
He has enjoyed it, yeah. I mean, he's so laid back, Wes, and he just fits in wherever. He's dead down to earth. He'll always, you know what I mean, be happy wherever he is, as long as he's playing football, I think. But I think he's enjoyed it. He's enjoyed the team. The fans are amazing out there. Yeah, the people are lovely. Yeah, and he's been playing really regular. He's done really well. I mean, he's been getting fittest man of the match and man of the match.
Even though he must be older.
And he's one of the oldest ones, yeah. So really proud of him.
You should be. And he should be really proud of you.
So all this work kind of links to your clothing line, doesn't it?
Yes, I have done a capsule collection with a label called OBD Clothing, and it's just a small collection that's empowering statements, jumpers, T-shirts. I'm wearing one right now.
Excellent.
Yeah, and they are also, there's a link on the website to buy these as well for the one woman at a time. And 30% of the profits goes to the charity.
Okay, so it's literally linked. And so you design everything and...
Yeah, so the company OBD Clothing is already established. She does already caption T-shirts.
She does it already.
But I wanted to do like a empowering woman statements and just do like a small collection with me. So.
And you were recently at the Manchester Fashion Show, weren't you?
Yes, we did a show there. And it went really well.
Pretty fashionable in Manchester.
Yeah.
Just finally, how do people help one woman at a time? Is there a website they can go to?
Yes, there's a website you can donate or contact us on. It's called onewomanataTime.co.uk.
Fantastic. I'm glad you found time to come on board to Sputnik. Give Wes my regards, please.
I will do.
And now it's your turn to tell us what you think through the portals of social media. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Right, so the Italian elections are coming up and literally anything can happen. So Fra Hughes says the call for socialization of wealth and an end to austerity is being hijacked by the right everywhere, as with Trump. Discord is channeled into rhetoric and calls for change, but in reality it's more theft from the people given to the rich. We need socialism everywhere and we need it now. And John Miles says Berlusconi is back. Blair and Major will be jealous.
Well, Berlusconi himself cannot be back, but he may be the puppet master, as Dr.
Yeah,
Russell
he seems to be very good at manoeuvring things.
said. But what I took from his interview was that the left everywhere has transformed itself into liberalism. And
Everywhere,
the
yes.
mass of the people don't want anything to do with it, because the left everywhere is not living in the same place, in the same country at the same time as the people whose votes they're seeking, about which more later, because I'm furious that the left in Italy is destroyed because it's become the party of the refugee and the immigrant at full stop. That's it.
Yeah, point. Right, so we have to leave it at that because that's all the time we've got for the tweet.
Alas, that means it's the end of the show.
But you can stay in touch with us on social media, on Facebook, Sputnik on Russia Today, or on Instagram and Twitter, RT_Sputnik. It's goodbye from me, Gayatri.
And from me, George Galloway. It's been marvellous.